In order to get to Antarctica, first we had to take a treacherous trip across the Drake Passage from the southernmost tip of South America to the tip of the western Antarctic Peninsula. But this was a spectacular trip in which we were followed by literally millions of seabirds that found their way along the air drifts that we created with our boat. And we were constantly hounded by beautiful albatross like this that always took an easy ride all along the wind drifts that we were creating with our boat, looking for food. And this bird absolutely never spends any time on land except when it's breeding. Once we get to Antarctica, we get on small Zodiac boats in order to make our landing and hike along shore, and we found a tremendous plethora of the cutest wildlife you could ever imagine. These penguins, and there are 5 different species that we saw, are the most friendly and intelligent social birds I've noticed. Although they seem to be most comfortable in water, on land, despite looking very clumsy, they are remarkably agile, and it is a very deceptive view you get of their waddling little prancing around, because they are quite stable and can move faster than you might imagine. Here you see 2 different species, chinstraps and Adelie penguins, all in the same colony, but they don't interbreed with each other. Despite the fact that they have no difficulty hanging out together, they remain separate species. Joe and Steve are planning the videography and the sound effects for this trip as we begin our exploration of Antarctica. It's pointing out the boat in the distance and the shoreline we're going to walk along as we encounter seals and penguins, whales and petrels and all kinds of shorebirds. In fact, summer in Antarctica is filled with life. These elephant seals are difficult to even notice because they blend in so perfectly with the rocks along the shore. And we almost tripped over this one, or actually almost walked over it thinking that it was a rock until it opened its eyes. It was a group of 100 of us on this expedition, and this is what I call the March of the Red Penguins, where we began to climb from shore, going up to the heights of the Antarctic mountains. Well, here we are, in my normal tone of voice. Steve has pushed me up to climb the top of Penguin Island Mountain. We are actually sitting right on the rim of this ancient volcano that formed Penguin Island. Here we are at the top of Penguin Island Mountain, surveying 360-degree view of Antarctic Ocean, Antarctica, Bransford. These chinstrap penguins are obviously incredibly elegant in the water as they make their way through, going up and going down with utter abandon, much more gracefully than they appear on land, as they go out to sea to pick up food for their young ones to bring back to shore where they are nesting. Oh my word, they're everywhere. Oh my word.
We'll stop, take a look at this.
Our ship waits offshore as we follow the penguins along the beach to see their nesting grounds and keep our distance enough so that we don't disturb their behavior, but nonetheless try to understand them as best as we can. All the penguins except for the emperor penguins and the king penguins depend upon the melting of the ice so they can go to land to mate once a year. It is only the emperor penguins that rely strictly on the ice year-round. Petrels and skuas represent a constant menace to the penguin eggs, and the only defense the penguins have against them is simply in their vast numbers. We delicately take our zodiacs in some of the rough waters, interweaving between icebergs, and there we come across seals that are resting in the so-called heat of the day so that they can relax actually on the ice before going back to look for food in the water. We get as close to the icebergs as can safely be performed with our rubber rafts and do a cruise to try to comprehend the incredible variety of beautiful white and blue and black that represents the magnificently designed color scheme of Antarctica. The water is cold and the wind is rough, the seas are rough, and this just adds more to the eerie sense of beauty with the blue and the black and the white that just overwhelms your senses. Gazing on this beauty gives us a kind of an understanding of the aesthetic mystery of what really is beauty. Does beauty have to be designed by a conscious entity, such as God, or does it just result from random sculpting of wind and ice and cold and water and rock to create this spectacle that we're surrounded by? On this windswept, rocky mountain rookery, the penguins are very busy hopping from rock to rock and going back into the water to get more food for their young. They hesitate a bit to make sure that there are no predators around, and then they dive. And they are at their most comfortable when they're in that water, as long as there are no leopard seals around to attack. It's the ever-present fear of leopard seals that makes them so cautious about diving in, and once one of them dives in, then the others all follow suit. Here you see I got dressed in my special expedition outfit, white tie and tails. Note that that's more of a penguin look than the standard tuxedo. And I more or less became the boss of the penguins, the leader, the giant among the penguins, and wandered among them freely as their imaginary leader. This ice shelf was in a rapid stage of receding, and indeed, 2 weeks later, there was no such ice shelf, and it was just all solid land. And they needed the solid land to lay their eggs. So they were actually looking forward to the melting of the ice shelf, so they wouldn't have to make the long, arduous journey on the ice to get back to their rookeries on the mountaintop in order to feed their young. The water here is actually 28 degrees Fahrenheit, so cold that you would lose all consciousness in about 2 minutes and certainly be dead in 3 or 4 minutes and have to be fished out. Nonetheless, Steve and his buddy Ben, you see, although Ben had a wetsuit on to protect him, they decided to go for a swim in this incredibly cold Antarctic water. He prepared his T-shirt beforehand just to remind himself of how cold it is. Ben was unbothered because his wetsuit kept him relatively warm, but Steve went in swimming trunks and T-shirt just for a leisurely dip. Came out very, very, very cold. But when he saw that the penguins were still jumping up and down in the water and left behind, he decided to go back in again. And then Ben, and then Tommy joined them, and then Victor joined them. Just crazy, tough guys. This water will kill you in 2 minutes or 3 minutes of submersion. And you can just see Victor is faking a smile, but Steve is showing, at least for his second time in, just how cold it is. This is one tough hombre, and he said this was really cold, without a wetsuit, that is. When we pulled Tommy out, he was shivering and actually in trouble, and we had to warm him up very, very quickly.
Oh my gosh.